Rachel's room. Her curtains were open, and her bed had been neatly made. I hoped that she'd had a good night's sleep, with none of those disturbing dreams. But I was still troubled about the conversation we'd had with next-door neighbour Bert the evening before. I didn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. How could a man who had been dead for 70-odd years turn up on our doorstep? It beggared belief. But I was also perplexed, because I couldn't fathom why Rachel looked so much like Elizabeth Pike. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence, but was Bert right? Could we be related to the Pike family? It seemed too ridiculous an idea to even contemplate, but I decided I'd give my great-aunt Frances a ring anyway for reassurance. I knew that she had an original copy of our family tree and was a mine of information about old family business. Having said that, I couldn't be sure of Rachel's father's side of the family. I hadn't seen Tom for a number of years, and I was sure Rachel had mentioned that he was currently living in some far-flung place. I'd have to ask her to contact him, but first I'd speak to Frances. I wandered down the stairs and into the kitchen. There was a handwritten note on the table. It read, "Gone to work. Didn't want to wake you. Are we going to fireworks? Text me. See you later. Love, R. Kiss." Fireworks, I wondered, and then noticed a colourful flyer lying underneath Rachel's note. I picked it up and read it. Monk's Ferry Priory, firework display and bonfire, Monday the 5th of November 2018, 6:30 p.m. Hot dogs and toffee apples. Tickets £5 from Chaplin's Books, Priory Lane. All welcome. Ah, gunpowder, treason and plot, I smiled. Of course, it was bonfire night. I put the leaflet back down on the table and picked up my phone to text Rachel. It seemed like a good idea that we go and have some fun together after the strain of the recent move and the tension of the past couple of days. She sent me a message straight back which said, "Great, can you get tickets?" I text back that I would and asked if she'd like me to pick anything up for her from town. Bonfire Toffee came back the immediate and emphatic response. After a quick shower and a hasty breakfast, I headed out to pick up the tickets from Chaplin's Books. I hadn't been to the shop before, but I guessed it wouldn't be far from the old priory, since they both appeared to be in the same vicinity. It was bright and sunny, and the sky was clear, but as I walked down Dick Street and headed towards the riverfront, an icy wind brushed against my cheeks, forcing me to stop and adjust the woolly scarf around my neck. As I was retying it, I realised I was standing outside another of the town's local inns. The old house at home, I muttered to myself, looking up and reading the words on the old hanging sign. Unusually, the word house had been spelled with a W in place of the normal U. I wasn't sure what that was all about. I took a close look at the sign, which was swinging and creaking in the chilly breeze, and noticed that the faded and chipped picture on the sign was an illustration of an old manor house. It looked just like the old hall at the back of our house, but a much grander and less dilapidated version. Over the pub's entrance door, in tiny writing, read, "Proprietor, Fuchsia Grange de Alderville, licensed to sell alcohol." What a mouthful, I thought, and then realised I'd heard the name de Alderville before. Of interesting that the old family connection still existed in Monks Ferry. I made a mental note to mention it to Rachel. I carried on down Dig Lane and then turned left onto Priory Lane, crossed over the road and headed over to the riverfront, where I leant against the railings to take in the spectacular view. The wide river sparkled in the sunlight, and I could see some small boats bobbing up and down in the water, and an old lighthouse perched on a rocky outcrop to the right. Beyond that, the ancient Welsh mountains made an imposing backdrop, with their snowy peaks shining in the winter sunlight. Near the horizon, the river darkened where it merged with the Irish Sea, and I could see little flecks of white foam rise and fall with the sway of the waves. I thought about the pikes and the scullions, and supposed that they had come ashore here at the old ferry terminal further down the lane, on their journey from Dublin all those years ago. Suddenly my reverie was broken when I heard a shout coming in my direction from the other side of the road. I turned. It was Stanley Fogg with his little dog. He was waving furiously at me. "Hello," he shouted. "I thought it was you." "Oh, hello," I shouted back. "Taking in the air?" he asked, as he picked up his tiny dog and walked across the road towards me. Yes," I said. "I'm surprised you recognised me. I've come out to get tickets for the fireworks display tonight. I couldn't help taking in the view." "It's a grand one," he said, adding, "You'll need Chaplin's books for the tickets." He pointed down the lane and I nodded. "Yes, I've seen the flyer," I said. "I'm also looking for somewhere to buy Bonfire Toffee. My daughter has a craving." "Well, you'll need the ferry newsagents," said Stanley, a few doors away from the bookshop. "They should have some there. They sell a lot of those old-fashioned sweeties, sugared bonbons and the like." "Oh good, I'll pop in there too," I said. "I'll walk down with you," he said, placing his little dog back down on the pavement. "I might buy myself some pear drops." We headed slowly down the lane together towards the newsagents. Stanley began telling me about all the various Monks Ferry firework displays he'd been to over the years. "Are you going to this one tonight?" I asked. "Yes, I think so," he answered, "if it's not too cold. I think our Bert's already got tickets. He popped in to see me this morning." "Oh, I see," I said uneasily. I wondered whether Bert had told Stanley about yesterday's visit to me, his rude neighbour next door. It didn't take long for me to get an answer. "Our Bert said you make a wonderful Bakewell tart," he said. "In fact, he brought some of it around to me. Said your daughter dropped it off." "Oh, yes, Rachel said she would," I answered slowly. Stanley picked up on my anxious tone. "You know, you mustn't take too much heed of what our Bert says," he said, stopping suddenly and turning to face me. "He's liable to flights of fancy sometimes." "I'm not sure what you mean," I answered cautiously. "Ghosts," said Stanley bluntly. I was taken aback by his unexpected directness, although it seemed to be a family trait, and looked away for a few seconds. Stanley put a hand gently on my arm. "Let me buy you a cup of tea, dear," he said. "You look like you need warming up. There's a little cafe just next to the newsagents." "Ah, okay, yes, that would be nice," I said, thanking him. The Riverside Cafe was tiny, but warm and inviting. We sat down at a little round table with a red and white checkered tablecloth. Stanley ordered 2 teas and a fruit scone for himself. I declined his offer of something to eat, since I'd only recently had breakfast. I watched him butter his scone and offer some of it to his little dog, which stood patiently next to his chair, while I took a sip of my tea, cupping my hands around the mug to warm them. Stanley took a bite of his scone and looked up at me. You see, our Bert joined the Navy as a lad. 16, I think he was. Got out of the house as soon as he could. Out of the house? I asked, puzzled. Mother and father's house, next door to you, he said. Bert moved back in after our parents died. Not sure why, really, since he'd spent much of his youth trying to get away from the place. Why was he trying to get away? I asked. He's what you might call a little sensitive, said Stanley, taking another bite of his buttered scone. I watched little bits of it fall back onto his plate, and he picked them up with a moist finger and popped them into his mouth. Sensitive? I asked, becoming more and more perplexed. Well, said Stanley, to be blunt, he always insisted that our house was haunted, right from being a little boy. It drove our mother crazy because the rest of us didn't know what he was talking about. So you didn't experience anything yourself? I said slowly, taking another sip of tea. Well, I wouldn't say that exactly. I did hear some things, creaks, bumps in the night, that sort of thing, but I never told Mother and Father, of course, and it sounds awful to say, but if our bird was getting into trouble over it, then I was happy to stay out of it, he said frankly. Oh, I answered, and what does he think about that all these years later? He doesn't know, said Stanley. Some things are best left unsaid. I remained silent, since I wasn't sure how to respond to Stanley's candid admission. Anyway, he said, our Bert reckoned he saw ghosts. Well, one ghost in particular, in the back garden. It was always the same young woman, dressed in blue. He'd be woken by the sound of her crying, and looking out of his bedroom window, he'd see her wandering around our garden or sitting at the fountain. Sometimes he said he'd see a light on in one of the windows of the old manor house at the back. He said it was the same woman in the same blue dress staring back at him out of the window. I sighed and thought about the things that Rachel had been telling me, about her strange dreams and the light she'd seen coming from the old hall from her own bedroom window. Did he say who he thought the ghost was? I asked Stanley apprehensively. Oh yes, answered Stanley. He was always sure about that. It was the ghost of Elizabeth Pike, you see. Stuck forever between two worlds. I think that's how he put it. I don't understand. What did he mean by that? I asked. Stuck in limbo is what I think he meant. You know, between life and death. But between you and me, it was Mrs. Scullion next door who put all those ideas in his head, said Stanley. You mean Beatrice Scullion? I said. I think Bert said he called her B. Yes, B. She was a bit, eccentric, shall we say. He was always round there, listening to her stories. She loved to tell stories, said Stanley. So she told him all about the story of Elizabeth Pike's murder then? I asked. Oh yes, said Stanley, though not the kind of thing you tell a young boy with a vivid imagination. I nodded. So you don't believe in the ghost of Elizabeth Pike? I asked. Our Bert believes it, said Stanley, putting another piece of scone in his mouth and avoiding a direct answer to my question. He believes that the ghost of Elizabeth Pike will continue to walk the earth until her murder is solved. calls her, said Stanley after a pause. Oh, I said, surprised. Who else has seen her? Mrs. Grange, up the road there. She's the landlady of the old house, he answered. Ah, the pub, I said. I passed it just before. Yes, said Stanley. She went to school with our Bert. Was in the same year, I think. She used to live in the vicarage, opposite the church. I think her father was Reverend something or other. I think the name over the door also said de Alderville, I said. The same as the people who originally lived at the old hall. I don't know much about that, but you can ask her yourself, said Stanley, picking up his little dog and rising from his chair. The old house opens for lunchtime trade about 12. I glanced at my phone. It was just past 11. Where had the morning gone? I'll do that, I said, taking the last sips of my tea and rising from my own chair. I followed Stanley out of the cafe and into the newsagent's next door. Arranged across 3 long shelves at the back of the shop counter were a number of large glass containers filled with brightly coloured sweets and toffees. The shop assistant measured out 4 ounces of pear drops and 4 ounces of bonfire toffee on one of those old-fashioned sets of scales with separate weights, and placed the little piles in 2 small paper bags. Stanley paid for the sweeties and a local newspaper and handed me the bag of toffee. A little present from me for your daughter, he said, smiling. Thank you, that's very kind, I said. I'll let her know. Outside the shop, Stanley said his goodbyes, and I said I hoped we might see him and Bert later at the fireworks display. After that, I wandered a little further down the road until I came to Chaplin's Books. It had a tall and narrow shop frontage with just 1 window and a door on the ground floor. A chime from a bell announced my arrival as I unfastened the latch on the faded shop door and went in. The room I entered was warm and very compact. However, it felt even more cramped due to the floor-to-ceiling shelving on each wall. Every shelf was crammed with old books, and there were piles of books of different sizes randomly stacked on the floor in front of the lower shelves. Other haphazardly assembled book towers were perched on a number of wooden dining chairs, and the shop had that wonderful old musty book smell that you either adore or despise, depending on your appreciation of old books, I suppose. I couldn't see anybody about, so I headed to an old office desk at the back of the shop. Unsurprisingly, the front of the desk was also lined with small piles of books, so I got a bit of a shock when I peeped over the piles and saw a little face with big eyes staring up at me. "Me gran's popped out," said the little head before I had a chance to say anything, "but she'll be back soon. Can I help you?" I smiled at the young boy on the other side of the desk, who I reckoned must have been about 10 or 11, and he smiled back. "Hello," I said. "Do you have any tickets for the fireworks display at the Priory tonight?" "Yes, there's some left," he answered, pulling open a drawer in the desk and taking out a small pile of hand-printed tickets wrapped in an elastic band. "How many do you want?" "Just 2, thanks," I said, reaching in my purse to take out some change. Just as I was about to hand the young boy a £10 note, the front door suddenly opened with a loud jingle and a rush of cold air, and a large older lady wearing a heavy dark woolen coat with a huge fur collar entered. "It's all right, Robert, I'll sort it," she said to the young boy, and turning to me said, "You wanting bonfire tickets, love?" "I am, but your grandson has been very helpful, and I began before the large lady cut across me. says he's got a cold, but there's nought wrong with the lad. Any opportunity to be at the shop." "Oh, right," I said, handing her the £10 note. "He likes books, then?" She took the note from me, screwed it up, and stuffed it into one of her coat pockets. "Yes, not that it'll do him any good if he doesn't get a good education," she hissed. Before I had chance to say anything, she continued, "You see, he's with me all day. I'm normally at home. This is my Arthur's shop, but he's in bed with one of his heads, so I'm here. And Veronica, my daughter, she's a nurse, has left him, the lad, with me," she continued, without hardly drawing a breath. "And between you and me," she said, looking round the room first to see if anyone else was listening, "I could do without it today. I had to cancel a hair appointment, and I was meeting Mrs. Fogg for lunch at the cafe. I had to nip out to let her know. Had to leave the lad in charge." "Oh dear, that's not good," I said awkwardly, adding, "He did very well though, your grandson." She sighed and casually threw her coat over one of the wooden chairs. Some of the books, precariously piled on top of the chair, toppled to the floor with a thud, but if she noticed, she didn't seem to care. "Anyway, dear," she continued, manoeuvring her large hips adeptly behind the desk and sitting down on the now vacant chair, "can I help you with anything else?" I said, looking round at the vast array of old books, which didn't look as though they were in any particular order. "Actually, do you have a local history section?" She turned her head and screamed towards the upstairs opening, "Robert, do we have anything on local history?" And then to me, in a much quieter voice, "If we do, our Robert'll know. I told you, he's never out of the place." Suddenly Robert's head appeared from behind the opening. He had a mug of hot steaming tea in his hand, which he handed to his gran. Then looking at me, he said in a very grown-up manner, "Were you looking for anything in particular, madam?" "Oh, well, yes," I answered, taken aback by his unexpected maturity. "Do you have anything on the history of the old hall? You know, the manor house next to All Hallows Church on Monk's Ferry Lane, or the church itself, something like that?" Robert nodded at me enthusiastically and skipped over to the other side of the room, dodging a couple of piles of books as he went. He opened up a step-ladder that was leaning against one of the shelves and scrambled up to the top so that he could reach the highest shelf. "We have general histories of the town here," he said, pointing to a row of different-sized hardbacks, some with dust covers and some without. "You might find something in there." He took one of the smaller books and flicked through some of the pages before launching it at me. "Catch," he said loudly. Startled, I tried to grab at the book as it came hurtling towards me, missed and watched it sail past me and land with a thud on the top of the desk, nearly taking out his gran's mug of tea. "Robert," screeched his gran, "you nearly sent my tea flying, you daft apeth." "Sorry, Gran," he said sheepishly. He mouthed a "sorry" at me, and then with some difficulty placed a couple of other bigger, heavier books under his arm and slowly climbed down the ladder. At the bottom he handed them over to me and I inspected the covers. Monk's Ferry, From the Romans to the Victorians by Maria Catchpole, Ph.D. I read, looking at the first one. "Published in 1973, said Robert. "So it is," I said, inspecting the information page on the inside of the book. "He remembers all the dates, all of them," said his gran, taking a noisy slurp of her tea. Robert looked pleased at his gran's suggestion. "I really do," he said to me, beaming. "Wow, that's some skill," I said, smiling. "Okay, let's have a look at this other book. There was nowhere to obviously sit down with the book, so I passed Maria Catchpole's history to Robert and perched the other large leather-bound volume on top of one of the book piles. I ran the palm of my hand carefully over the elaborately decorated cover. "Ah," I said in recognition and delight, "The History of the Old Hall by the Reverend Charles Griffin." "Do you know it?" asked Robert. "It's from a series of 10 volumes, but we only have 2 of them, don't we, Gran?" said Robert. "If you say so, our Robert," answered Gran, sipping more of her tea. "I do know it," I said. "My daughter and I were only looking at a copy in the town's library archives the other day. What a wonderful book, and what a wonderful find, Robert." Robert's smile widened, and clearly pleased with himself added, "This one's from 1901. It's a first edition, and it has a dedication inside." "So it has," I said, opening the large cover. There, on the first page, was the dedication, handwritten in pencil. I read it aloud. "To my dearest brother Cecil, Culpum, Poena, Premit, Comus, Veritatum, Dies, Aperit, Charles, March 1901. "Do you know what any of that means?" said Gran, rising from her chair and craning her neck to get a better look. "No, I don't," I answered, perplexed.